Hello and welcome to the Hoop Troop podcast. I am Matt O'Connor, and joining me as he does on all of our shows is my cousin Luke Drobner.
What's up, guys?
And we are back. It is to the end of November, so we're about a month and a half into the season, probably 20 games or so,
20
give or
games.
take. Yeah, so enough of a sample size where I'd say we know the landscape. We know who's good, who's bad, who has a shot to ascend later on in the year if there's some injuries, certain things like that. But at this point, I'd say we can start making some assumptions about some teams, some players, that whole thing. But I have some early takeaways. And last time we did, we let Luke kind of lead the charge with some of his notes. I'm going to take charge this time. There's some things I need to talk about. And I'm going to start off with the Phoenix Suns.
Knicks Nets tonight?
No. I'm going to get to that. But
Okay.
also tonight is Suns Warriors, who are the best two teams in the NBA right now. The Warriors have lost 2 games, the Suns have lost 3, and the Suns have won 16 in a row. There's a reason they went to the finals last year. They're still very good. The Suns are a great team. Do you buy it? Do you buy this run? Do you buy that they're this dominant of a team? If you
I
look
buy
at the
it.
teams they've beaten on this run, what do you
I
think?
mean, 16 straight means you have to play someone decent at some point, right?
Yeah, their last win was against the Nets on the second night of a
Brooklyn.
back-to-back. Pretty
Maybe
good
the
win.
Knicks aren't bad. They beat Denver, but I'm not sure
I don't
if
think
Jokic
Jokic
is
played.
playing.
I don't think
They
Jokic played for that.
beat Dallas twice. They beat Minnesota, who's now up in the standings. I think they're 6th. They beat Portland, who's a good team. They beat Memphis, who's a good team. They beat Atlanta, who's a good team.
Atlanta's fine. Atlanta's fine. They're underperforming this year. They're kind of
Yes.
rebounding, but like I don't know. They played Houston twice, New Orleans, Cleveland twice, San Antonio. I think
Mhm.
they may have played Sacramento. Yeah, they played Sacramento. I was just looking at the overall records of the teams they've played, and now I doubled up here, so I'll give you the records when you double up and when you don't. But so the overall record for those 16 games of the teams they played is 147 and 179. So below 500. But if you pluck out the games where they played teams the second time, so like you take out the second Dallas time, whatever, and you just take the
Mhm.
overall records for every team they've played, it is 122 and 144. So a little better, narrows the gap a little bit. But overall, the records of the teams they played below 500. And so even the teams that you look at where, okay, you say they're above 500, like Denver is technically on the nose 500. They were missing
Jokic.
Jokic. I would.
But I mean, 16 straight, right? I think we talked about this morning about Minnesota, where you were like, they've won 7 of their last 8. And I was like, oh, but they haven't played anybody good. It's still 7 of their last 8. They're still playing good basketball, you know?
Now,
It's
the
hard
other
to
thing,
sustain it.
right. And I guess that's the thing. Tonight is really the biggest test. Like, as much as you want to say, okay, it's hard to win 17 in a row, fine, they're due for a loss. At the
Mhm.
same time, if they can go out and beat this Warriors team,
Be huge.
then I really would jump out and say, you know what? They're a legitimate contender to win this whole thing. I'm still skeptical, though. I don't know why. And say what you want. Chris Paul's leading the league in assists, even at his advanced age. Like, they're damn good. I mean,
They're
Miles
very
Bridges
good.
or McCall Bridges looks,
Michael. Yeah.
yeah, looks very good. Aiton, that's another thing that I want to get into when I talk about the Suns is they should have paid him. He looks so good. You're saying
I
no.
I my biggest concern with this roster is their depth. And that's just like they have guys, Cameron Payne, Landry Shamet, Cameron Johnson, and that's fine, like point guard through small forward. And Cam Johnson can even come down and play power forward depending on who else you have on the floor. But like when you think about like a championship team, their ability to play small and their ability to play big, I think DeAndre Ayton's really great. But and their backup right now is JaVale McGee, but that's not like a new lineup. It doesn't change the dynamic of the way they play, right? It's just they plug in JaVale McGee and they play with JaVale McGee instead of DeAndre Ayton. It doesn't allow them to match up against teams like the Clippers, who might play small, or even like the Lakers could play small if they really wanted to, and I'm sure they would. And I think obviously like Anthony Davis isn't small, but he's smaller than DeAndre
Right.
Ayton or a big guy. So
I mean, he's averaging
I think
I guess he's tied his career high in total rebounds. He's a little
Ayton,
off his career high points per game. He's like 3 points off of
uh,
that. Like
okay, the paying Ayton thing isn't so much as saying like Ayton's bad. I think Ayton is really good. I think he's a great center. It's just the way basketball is played, the center position is not valuable. You don't pay centers max contracts. You get guys like Clint Capella who wanted like $100 million from the Rockets back when they had Harden and Chris Paul. And the Rockets were like, no, we can't pay you that much. You know, it just doesn't fit. And he ended up getting something like 80, 85 million, which is just, that's just like, that's the range for top notch centers. The fact that Utah paid Rudy Gobert is bad for the rest of the league, but it's also because Utah like has no ability to attract talent. They need to keep that. And so they paid Rudy Gobert the like absolutely insane contract he's getting. And it's, I'll be honest with you, like it's not worth it. You know, I like,
so here's the thing though. You're equating Aiton to these traditional centers in the NBA and not necessarily a more versatile one, which I feel like no, is he a stretch big? Not necessarily.
no,
He has a mid range game though that those other guys that you mentioned don't have. And so I think that's where you start to say, okay, you know what, that is valuable, and especially too if he starts to bring that out. He right now he's shooting, his efficiency is the best it's been in his career. So like I think that there's encouraging signs there, and like yeah,
okay,
maybe you're right. It is a little daunting when you get into like max contracts, but like for a second contract like that rookie scale extension, even at its biggest, like it's still only 20 to 25 million dollars a year, which I don't think for a player of his tier is that bad. Like I don't think that that's like that egregious of a contract, especially if he
DeAndre,
improves.
DeAndre in one of the full 5 year, $172.5 million max. So
I
172
mean,
divided by 5 is 34 million a year for a center. And like it's not okay, he can't shoot a mid-range shot. He can't shoot free throws. It's do we play him? If we had to, could we play him a full 48 minutes against a small ball lineup? If we had to, you know, could he shoot a three, right? Like if you want to get paid the full max contract and you play center, you have to be Embiid. You have to be Tim Duncan. You have to be someone like that. Clint Capella, Clint Capella
right.
is getting paid $15 million from the Houston Rockets. I don't know how big that contract was. Clint Capella's current contract is with the Atlanta Hawks is 17, 18, 20, and 22. I think Aiton's better than that. Maybe you give him 25 million a year, right? And so 5 times 25 is 125 million. That's $50 million off the contract he wanted, which I like. That's reasonable. I think $25 million and that scales up to maybe 30. Like that works, you know?
I yeah, I don't know. I am generally a little skeptical. Like I do think that yes, we should be looking at it in that lens where centers are not as significant for success for teams in the NBA. I mean, you go back in time and realistically, since what Dwight Howard carried that Magic team, like no team has really been led by a center. So
And it's not like he's
yes,
selling jerseys, you
yes,
know,
yeah,
selling,
but
he's not selling jerseys, he's not selling shoes, he's not selling tickets, right? That's Booker. I think he's good. He's not like centers just aren't valuable in today's NBA. And I think that's so sad, I guess.
but then where do you think? Because someone's going to give him money. What do you think happens with him?
Someone's going to give him money. He's a restricted free agent. So someone's going to offer him a hefty contract in the range of which I'm saying, somewhere between 25 to $30 million a year instead of 34 he wanted. And he'll get paid that by the Suns. I don't think he's going to end up walking. And
Oh, I
maybe
do.
after that 4 year contract, maybe he ends up walking like a Gordon Hayward because he feels disrespected. Fine, that's okay. By the time he walks away from this 4 year contract, your championship window's closed. Chris Paul's probably not on the roster just because he's either older or he's not playing the same way he is right now because he's again he continues to age. He can't continue to play that like great role as you get older. Right? He's Chris Paul's what 34.
I thought he's 36 now.
He's 36.
Yeah.
So in 4 years, you're telling me a 40-year-old Chris Paul is going to be your second man behind the Devin Booker? I don't know.
No, no, I'm not. But that's the thing. Like, think of the growth that you see from players from Aiton's age. He's what, 23, 24? Let me go up here.
23.
Yeah. So
23.
4 years from now, he's not even going to be entering his prime. Like, that's what I mean. It just seems like a good investment. And like, what's the worst case scenario here? Like, you're going to lock in a solid interim center and like, he'll probably improve. I don't see him getting worse.
So, ESPN links you to 538 where they do the player projections, right? And they try and compare him to like other players in the league or past players. His number one comparison is Jonas Valanciunas, Karl-Anthony Towns, Andrew Bynum, John Collins, Al Horford, Clint Capella, Al Jefferson, Domantas Sabonis, and they're saying
it's a wide range.
It is a wide range. His 5-year market value is $120 million of 5 years.
Right, which is about what you're saying.
Right, he's going to get like 25 to $30 million a year, and that's his market. I think he did a good job in asking for the max. Like, you have to be realistic and understand that no team's going to offer you that max, and that's just like the nature of being a center. Nature of being a center that isn't going to change the face of a franchise, like Joel Embiid.
It's fair. That's a fair point. I guess I'm just more bullish on him than most people, and I just generally am in the same camp as you, where centers are not important, or centers are important. They're not as important.
I could pick up a good center pretty easily, but it's a lot harder to find like a solid starting quality shooting guard.
Yes, I agree. They're more important, but you already have one of those. So it's not like you need to be like worried about how you're going to pay the next one. You already have them and you're already paying it. So like,
right. No, but I'm saying like if you're just some random team and let's say you have like you have 10 of the most average players on your roster, you're looking to fill 5 roster spots. All 5 of your starters, you have to pay a good point guard, a good shooting guard, a good small forward. That shooting guard or that small forward, they're going to get paid a lot more than all the other positions. And that's just the way the NBA works.
That's fair. All right.
And also, like I'm saying, you can't pay him all this money because I still have concerns with their depth between the small forward to the power forward. After Mikal Bridges and Drake Crowder come out, who are you putting in there? And that, like, Cam Johnson's fine. They have
he looked good. They've looked solid. So like now I'm looking across the board here. Like, I gotta say, adding Shamet has been a huge addition to the bench. Like, him and Campaign have been very good, and it doesn't solve your issue with wings. But I do think, having a lot more of that bench offensive load falling on the guards alleviates the need. So it's more like you need defensive wings at that point to accompany them. And so, and I think they get away with that with Cam Johnson, or even if Frank Kaminsky gets in. Like, I just think you get away with a little. And then, there is a drop off. I'm looking at this roster. But
I think
at this point, they're a playoff team. So you're going to shorten the rotation to 8-9 guys anyway. So,
but it's about having the rotations. It's about having the lineups, right? And I feel they need a body. They need and like you said, they need a veteran defender. That's all they need, and they need him to play a small forward, power forward position. And I think that's all they're really missing. But like, if you want to pay that guy, if you want to try and attract him, right? Like, if you look at some of those guys who play those roles, like a Paul Millsap, or Paul Millsap's on a vet minimum, but like, if you want someone who's gonna grow into this roster a little bit, you might have to pay them $8 to $10 million a year, and that requires you to have a little bit of cap space.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. I just think that even if you're paying 8 in this instance, don't you figure there are vet minimum wings that you can get to come play? Who wouldn't want to come play with Chris Paul, Devin Booker, Ayton, Bridges? Like,
I agree with you. I think a lot of people
would, especially if Sarver sells the team and there's like no drama associated with going there. I mean, it just feels to me like something that you do, and you build a good, stable base, and then you're going to have those guys who want to come join. And you're not necessarily going to have them be expensive contracts. Those guys that are filling those vet defensive roles, like, I think it's going to be a little more balanced. That's just me, though, because I agree. You're right. Center's antiquated. And so unless you're truly adapting and you're spacing the floor and you're, doing that all while rim running, grabbing rebounds, which is, they're few and far between the players that can do that. Like, you're right. It's not worth paying them.
Like Like think about how much uh Harrison Barnes makes. Like that's how he's making an outrageous amount of money. Don't get me wrong, but like that's the type of guy you want. Like
You're not going to get
and
him.
then make
Like
money.
that's
Like how
that's
much do you think you'd have to pay like a Sadiq Bey? Obviously, isn't a better
well, that's the
defender,
thing. He's
but
a
is a
rookie, or he's on his rookie contract. So like you're getting away with him on a steal, and then you're going to have to give him like some sort of extension. I'm sure the Pistons are planning that at some point. When he's up for it. Maybe not the full max. I don't know that he's going to get that, but you're right. Like that's the type of player. But so I
he won't
think
get the full max.
if you complement what you have, with either veteran contracts or young contracts that, teams are trying to get off of, whatever, I think you can still round out that roster and it'd be
Do
okay.
they have assets? Do they have like picks or something like that they can trade away? They don't
Uh,
have anybody young on the roster.
well, define young.
I mean, nobody young and expendable. They don't have like an asset like that on the back end of their roster.
No,
Unless you
not
want to,
necessarily. Unless you're going
they
to
could
start
trade.
getting, I was
They
going
could
to say
trade
getting rid
Alfred Payton.
of, oh God, they should. He's not even playing on this run. But like
Yeah,
that's the problem. I think the guys that you would shed that are young are the guys that you want playing and that you want to keep. Um,
they could try and trade Jalen Smith. They already denied. They didn't pick up his options, so that could be difficult.
yeah, and unless you're going to move Cam Johnson, he's 25. Like, I know you don't necessarily want
But
to.
he's in your rotation, and you don't want to do that.
Right, exactly. Then there's really no one that you're going to have. But that's why it's more buyouts and then picks, and I think
Yeah,
that's what you're going to have to look at.
hopefully they can pick somebody up off the buyout market. People
Yeah.
like Blake Griffin's no longer in the rotation for
Yeah. I mean, there's
Brooklyn.
a few guys.
I don't know how well he fits in at
He might. I mean, he can play the four.
forward.
Like, I don't think he
I think
needs
he
to
could
be
play the
playing the
four.
five like he was with the Nets. I
But like, would you
think
rather have Frank Kaminsky or Blake Griffin?
it's a good question. If I'm them, maybe both just for versatility. You play
Maybe.
Kaminsky if you need more offense, Blake Griffin if you need someone a little more physical. I feel like uh, that's a toss up. It's unfortunate that it's reached that point in Blake's career where it's a toss up between him and Frank Kaminsky, but
He's at the end of it. He's such a like the whole point of Blake Griffin was really good when he was super athletic, and now that some of
yeah,
the
of course.
athleticism faded, he's trying to lean on his skills, which just haven't
Not really
developed
working
as
out.
quickly.
All
Yeah,
right.
I mean,
Speaking of buyout trade candidates,
uh,
I'm going to pivot here to the New York Knicks, baby.
oh baby,
I'm talking about
Kemba
them.
Walker.
It's been yes. So
You excited for
for
the game
those of
today?
you who do not know, Kemba Walker has been just removed entirely from the rotation after starting like the first 20 or so games. Not going to the bench, straight out of the rotation. Tibbs has seen enough, yanked him. I agree that it was time because he was pretty much unplayable. He has been awful on defense. That starting lineup with him on the floor has the worst defensive rating in the NBA. And then the offense, I think, is like 27th with him on the floor out of 30 teams.
It wasn't good. The defense was really bad, and the offense wasn't good.
Right. And so the value of Kemba, of bringing him in, the idea was, in theory, a guy like this is going to be able to spot up and shoot threes. He's going to be able to penetrate and kick and create offense, to take some of the burden off of Randall. And so in theory, yeah, that would work. Kemba's that type of player. The problem is I think he relied a little bit too much on, in the past when he was successful, his ability to create offense and like in the paint, but really like difficult shots where you're contorting your body, drawing contact, things that now that he's older and his knees are giving in, he can't really do or even like attempt at this point. And so he has been a non-factor. And then defensively, he's never been great. And so it's getting exposed and he's undersized. And Tibbs is a defensive coach. And if you're that much of a negative on that end of the floor, which he has been, you're going to get yanked. I'm shocked it happened this way, where he's just being removed from the rotation entirely. But I do think it's the right call. I don't know that I would have done it this way. I think I would have tried to play around a little bit more to see if maybe he fit with the bench or smaller minutes or whatever. But yeah, Burks is now in the starting lineup, which signals that it's going to be Rosen quickly off the bench. And it makes sense to try and keep that bench unit together because they've been so dominant. They're one of the best units in the league, let alone just bench units. Like overall, their net rating is one of the highest. So, I guess if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And you're going to try and shorten the rotation. And it could be a good move. I don't know. I don't know how you feel about it, but
I
tonight's going to be a fun test for it because I'm glad they're playing the Nets the opening night of doing it. No, like I think it's one thing if like, all right, fine, they were playing a bad team like the Rockets, and then they beat them up. You don't really
right.
learn a lot from that. The Nets are going to poke any holes in this new rotation. So, I'm intrigued. I am nervous because I still think it sounded like Rose might not be coming back. I still have to kind of check some of that. So a lot of this might be outdated by the time we release this episode tomorrow. But I do like I think it's generally the right call, especially when you're going in and playing such a important game like the one
What
against the Nets.
happened? Derrick Rose is out with what?
It's like I think a leg injury of some kind, a knee, an ankle, something like that.
Okay.
He's missed the
I think
past
you
few
guys
games.
I think you guys have a lot of playmaking on the roster,
I mean,
but not.
quickly has taken a huge leap.
I think it has to like I think you have a lot of playmaking on the roster. I think Julius Randle, obviously you can pass. RJ Barrett can pass. I don't think Evan Fournier is a pure shooting. He's more of a combo guard than just like a shooting guard where he's just going to score points. And Alec Burks is also similar where it's more of like flow. But I think the problem is you don't have a single person who's looking to pass before they shoot. I think everybody on this roster is trying to find their own shot, but you don't have a guy who's like, let me try and make this easy for other people. Let me get RJ started. Let me get Julius started. I don't think there's a person on this roster. And I think the hope is that Kemba Walker could kind of be that. And I think throughout the years, we've seen that Kemba more relies on his shot. He's more in the lineup to score points. And since he has the ball in his hand so much, he ends up producing assists. And I also like more on Kemba is like, so when he left, so we see him all the time in Charlotte. He's very good in Charlotte, but none of those. It's not like any of those Charlotte teams went very far. I think the best year they might have had was like the 8th seed in the East, and in like a weak East too. It wasn't like the East was that all that amazing while he was in Charlotte. And then when he gets to Boston, he's good but not great. They have a lot of locker room issues. Things aren't really flowing.
I don't know how much of that is his fault, but you're right.
I don't
It
think
did exist.
I think it did exist. And I don't think that's because of Kemba Walker. I think he's a good player. I think he shows up and plays his game. I think after leaving Charlotte, nobody's been able to really utilize him the way he needs to be utilized. Kind of like Isaiah Thomas, where he was so great in Boston, and then all of a sudden he's out of Boston, partly due to injuries, but also because I think people were running the wrong type of plays that Isaiah Thomas needed to be Isaiah Thomas. I think Kemba Walker needs to be in a situation where they're like, here's our third option. When our two guys aren't playing, this is our guy. And I think it's hard to find that role somewhere, especially on a competitive team, right? Because Kemba wants to be on a competitive team, and that's why he's not in OKC anymore.
Yeah, and I mean, I agree with everything you just said, and I think it's fitting that you brought up Isaiah Thomas because I think they're unfortunately following very similar trajectories as far as just like the way their career goes. I think Kemba has a little more wiggle room because he's just bigger than Isaiah Thomas, and like hip injuries are a little different than knee injuries. It's like I really do think that limited Isaiah Thomas. But that said, like I do think there will be teams that call the Knicks to try and get Kemba, especially 2 years, $8 million a year. Like it's really not a bad contract. Like even if he's bad on defense and whatever, like I think in the right situation that's a fine contract. That's not hard to move.
I could see Kemba as a sixth man somewhere. I think that would be a great position for him to be in.
But that's the thing. That's why I'm shocked Tibbs is going full blown. You're just out of the rotation right now. Whereas it's not even like
because you guys
experimenting.
There's a lot of guard depth. And I think Tibbs, like you also mentioned, is a defensive coach. So he wants to play his bigger players who kind of get in the way and cause a little bit more chaos on defense. So, I mean, you guys have like Quigley's what, like 6'4", 6'5"?
I think a little shorter than that. Yeah.
He's 6'3". D Rose 6'2". But I mean, after that,
Yeah, but
Evan
even
Fournier 6'6", RJ Barrett 6'6". I mean, Obi
and the
Toppin's
other
what,
thing
six
too is
seven.
it became apparent just based on how well the bench was playing that Quickly and Obi both need more minutes just in general.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that logjam at the begin, kind of like the 1, 2, 3, there's so many guys
Yeah,
fighting for minutes there that now you open it up a little bit. The bigs are banged up. So like between Nerlens, Mitch, and Taj, they've all missed, their fair share of games. I think
yeah.
you're going to see Obi then slide in a little bit more, play more. And
I had
so,
that. I had that written down in my notes. I was watching Knicks versus Bulls. Vujovic was still out. Bulls were
oh,
playing
yeah,
Kobe White, Zach
Bulls
Levine,
won that
Lonzo
one.
Ball, DeMar DeRozan, and Javante Green. That was their five.
Yep.
White, Levine, Ball, DeRozan, Green. Super small. I think the tallest player out there was DeRozan at 6'7", maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe Javante Green's taller than him. I don't know. And the Knicks were playing Rose, Quickly, Burks, Toppin, and Nerlens Noel, who I don't like.
Well,
And
I
my thought
mean,
was just
yeah.
like, why don't you just play Toppin at the five and just like go small and like live with it? And again, playing the Nets is another team where like who they're gonna play at center? Aldridge, Millsap. Like why not let
Yeah.
Obi run at the five? Because like I'm not concerned about Aldridge like bodying Toppin. Like that, like, he's not that post presence. It's not like he's gonna grab a rebound over Toppin. Even then, it's like. And
No.
I'd rather not have Obi or even let Julius Randle play center, which is what he was doing last year.
Yeah.
But like,
And the past few games, they've kind of been forced to do that with people being out. And I think that's
mm-hmm,
what led to Tibbs making the changes because he realized, okay, this is working. Like they've had some of their more of their success when they have some sort of combination of the bench and starters and generally a little
mm-hmm,
smaller. And so
right.
I think you can experiment, you can play around now with a tighter rotation and see which ones are, a little more effective and lean on them more. But you're entirely right. I mean, Nerlens has rock hands, but at the same time, if you got to go big, having the trio of Mitch, Nerlens, and Taj in any capacity is a threat. Like it's going to be hard for teams to really navigate that. Like, and I think it's going to be, for me at least, interesting to see how Tibbs can, rein in his stubbornness because
Yeah.
I mean, we saw it last year. That's why I was even surprised that he made this move. Um, but Luke, you're sideways. What's going on
Sorry.
here?
My phone's running out of
There we
battery. I had to
go.
turn off the.
Oh,
There we go. Okay.
all right. But no,
I
so
had to plug it in.
Tibbs was stubborn all of last year with playing Elfrid Payton at the one, even though that was a net negative for the team.
Yeah.
Did it all year, and then finally in the playoffs, he decides to make the change, which was just the worst time to do it. And so I think he learned from that and is like, you know what, this Kemba experiment isn't working. It's time to pull the plug. Fine. Now I'm wondering, I know he learned his lesson, but like, is he willing to experiment, change, or is he still going to be super stubborn and whatever? So, even if they lose to the Nets tonight, like they do have a hard upcoming schedule. Like I think this week they play good teams like the Nuggets. Then I'm forgetting who the other one is. Someone else good. Um, but so I look at it and I'm like, all right, fine.
You
Good
got
gauntlet to experiment.
you got you're at Brooklyn tonight.
Yep.
You got Chicago and New York. You got Denver and New York. Then you're at San Antonio, at Indiana, at Toronto. Those are your next couple of games. Next six games.
Yes. So, I think those six will be a good indicator because you play a healthy mix of good and bad teams in hostile and comforting situations. So, like, I am a little more confident with it. And so, I don't want to put the cart before the horse here, but I think it's a smart change. And I think now it's just on Tibbs to kind of really hone in and figure out what works and what makes sense. Is Grimes going to start playing a little more, the rookie? Like, he's been
You guys have had
fine in his
some.
minutes.
You've had some G League guys like through my Twitter feed. I've seen some like Lucas Samanchich, obviously.
Yeah. And then they've
What's the
been
other
sending
guy?
Deuce McBride down too. And he's been playing
And he's
well.
been playing well.
It's a good problem to have. They have a lot of good guys in the roster, which is why I think come the
I think it just needs to
deadline, they can
develop a
be
little
active.
bit.
They can make some smart moves.
Actually, like unless Kevin Knox out of nowhere is just going to end up being good, you
He's
still
not.
need some.
Kevin Knox is
You
back,
need a
and that
you need a
experiment is
big.
over. The
You need a
only
stretch big. You need like a Mike Muscala.
Yeah, no, I actually agree. I definitely agree with that. Taj is like our closest thing to a stretch big. And so
He doesn't shoot threes though.
he has been this year, not well, but he's been shooting them.
Okay.
I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but he has been, firing on corner threes. Um, but yeah, like the fact that this is the conversation is a bad thing. So you're right. You need a little more versatility at the five.
Mm-hmm.
And so, maybe you can go make that happen. I don't know.
Here we are talking about the Knicks and like moves they can make. I have a couple other ones. I'm talking Atlanta trying to move Cam Reddish or Gallinari, and I also have the Cavs trying to move Ricky Rubio.
Are
I don't
both
know
of
if
are
any of
are
those.
all of those things happening, or are those things that you
No,
want to
no, no.
happen?
Those are just thoughts I've had because
Oh,
like
see,
Rubio's
I think the
averaging.
Hawks hang on to everyone. I think they are one of like the weirdest Swiss Army knife teams where they have pretty solid depth at every position and they can throw random ass combinations at you, and it's just how do you stop it? And so like if Trey can get going like he was, in the past couple of years,
Yeah.
they're going to be scary again. And there's a reason they've kind of pulled the nose of the plane up, and they're now over 500 after struggling at the beginning. Like
Mhm.
I mean, I hate the Hawks because they sent the Knicks home last year, but like they're good. It's hard. It's hard for me to admit, but they are. And so, I don't have that same feeling that you got to start shedding some of it so that other guys can play more. I get what you're
Yeah.
saying, but I don't know. I kind of like it. I like that they're just deep and they're just a complete team. They're not gonna. It's not gonna be the same guy who beats you every night. I mean, Trey realistically will be that guy, but you never know who's going to pop off for a good 22 points here or there. And so they can
Right.
just throw a lot at you, and it's hard on the fly to adjust to that. So I like them, unfortunately, and I know if anyone who's a Knicks fan is listening to this, they're going to hate me, but it's the truth. I'm very in on them. That said, though, I agree with Ricky Rubio. I think the Cavs don't really, and I guess with Sexton getting hurt, maybe you keep him, but like what are you doing playing him? What's his role? What's his, in the future, like in your long-term plans? Like, what are you doing? You don't need him. And someone would trade for him. He would be useful on a good team. He absolutely
He
would.
would.
That contract is a
The
little tough, I think, but beyond that,
the wait. Say that one more time.
the Rubio contract is a little tough, but beyond that, I think it's like what 15
Is it
plus
tough?
million.
Oh, it's 17 million.
Yeah,
I didn't realize that. Okay.
that's the hard
This is
part. So
it's
I think
the
you.
last year on the contract actually. So
Oh, it is. I
someone
thought he
might
had a
take a
couple more.
shot.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Uh,
it just says 2020, 21, 22.
well, with them in mind, I think there are obviously there's always teams that look for point guards. So between Kemba,
Mhm.
you look at Rubio, and then I'm sure there's going to be a few other guys available at the deadline.
Okay. And also talking
Contending
about the
teams,
Hawks,
yeah.
I didn't realize that a lot of these guys are actually playing like really solid rotational minutes.
See, that's what I mean. They're a well-oiled machine of just like balanced players. It's the weirdest thing because like it's just not
They don't
historically
have
how you
a
win,
they don't have a
but
backup
they're
point
good.
guard. I think Kemba Walker
Ah,
might be
there we
good. I think
go.
Kemba Kemba Walker might not be bad on this team. You trade like Lou Will and something for Kemba. I think Kemba could back up Trey Young pretty well. I don't know
Oh,
how you
give
feel
me
about that.
picks. I don't care. You don't even have to send me a player back. Just take Kemba. Give me
I
some
think it's more
sort of
about this
asset.
getting those salaries to work, right?
Other teams that I think we could see, trading for guards are both LA teams. I could see trying to just, on their bench.
I think LA needs to try to do something. The Lakers need to try to do.
Well, that's a good transition because I actually just got a text. LeBron James has entered health and safety protocols and is out tonight against Sacramento. So LeBron out for even more time now. I mean, I'm pretty sure LeBron is vax, so I don't know I don't think he's going to miss more than like 10 days or whatever. And then
Yeah,
with
yeah,
back to
yeah.
back tests, I think it's less. But
I think
still,
they're load managing him a little bit too.
if he misses more time, and then I'm pulling back, this is the Stat Muse tweet from November 27th. Anthony Davis this season, and I'm going to read the
Uh,
whole tweet. I know we've been
yeah,
through
yeah,
this,
yeah.
but we got to talk
It's
about it.
tough.
We haven't actually discussed it. 16.7% on threes, worst in NBA history by any player with 2+ attempts per game and 20+ games played. 38.3 on mid range, worst in the NBA by any player with 100+ attempts. 33.1% on jump shots, worst in the NBA by any player with 150 plus attempts. Holy crap. That's awful. And he keeps shooting.
I think he said today that he's going to continue to shoot it no matter what.
Yeah. And it's almost like that's a threat. He's like threatening the Lakers fans. I mean, oh my God.
I agree with his mentality where you have to say to yourself, like, I'm a good shooter. I can hit these shots. I'm confident that these shots will go down. I think he can hit those shots. I think he's proven that he can hit those shots. He's never been a great 3-point shooter. Shot 26% last year. I think his career high is 33% on threes on 3.5 attempts a game. It isn't bad, but
no,
I think when the shots that those 3-point shots that he does hit are like wide open off a great pass. Those are the shots he hits from three.
See, my takeaway
I don't
from
think
this,
he's getting those shots, and I think a lot of the threes he's pulling are like pull up threes in transition, almost where like Russ comes down the floor, he's trailing the play, Russ kicks it out, AD's like I'm open for three, and he shoots a slightly off balance three, which isn't really his shot, right? He needs to get his feet set, he needs to be open, right? And I think it's just difficult. I think everybody on this Lakers team is really trying really, really hard to try and figure out how to play with each other because
yeah, definitely.
Obviously, at 11-11, they're in seventh place in the standings right now. They're in seventh right now. Right. I think they're just having a difficult time. I think LeBron James obviously is great, and it's very easy for him to play with a lot of different players. But you have to remember that it's not so easy to do that for some other players like Westbrook. We all know it takes Westbrook at least half a season to really figure out and mesh with some of his teammates.
Right.
This is a big adjustment for Anthony Davis too. And we have conversations about Anthony Davis all the time where we're saying, is AD top 5? Is AD top 10? And as time goes on, we start, sifting it through, and you kind of realize he's more closer to top 10, top 20 than he is top 5. And that also can factor into the way that him and his teammates are playing.
So
I think their spacing is terrible.
Yeah. I look at it more as an issue of not so much Anthony Davis himself. I think he's taking what he's been given and he's, not thriving, but I blame that more on roster construction. And also you look at where he is playing well this year, and it's in the paint. It's when he's playing the 5. And so there are things that I think this team can do to adjust that can benefit him, and that can, try and drag those numbers up a little bit to make them a little more AD friendly. But I think as a whole, it all boils down to roster construction, and the Lakers are in a bad spot with that. And so they're a team that they're going to have to make some changes. They're going to have to, because there's no way this team is winning a championship with the way they're playing.
Like even the shooters they brought in, I keep seeing stuff about how they're not so great at hitting this type of shot or that type of shot. Like Malik Monk. I think Malik Monk is a good shooter. And when you look at his stats on paper, he's a good shooter. But is he the right shooter? Is he the person that's going to make a difference on the roster, right? And Avery Bradley's the same way. Avery Bradley got cut by the Warriors, and you're going to pick him up on your Lakers team. Don't get me wrong, every team's different. But is Avery Bradley, who just got cut by the Golden State Warriors, who are in first place, is he a starter on your championship roster?
No, absolutely not. No, so and that's the thing you look at, and you're like, okay, wouldn't the Lakers wouldn't the Lakers just have been better if they didn't make the Westbrook trade, and you had KCP, you had Trez, you had whatever.
I can understand getting rid of some of those guys. I think it was like get rid of Kuzma, but get rid of Kuzma. I think they would have been in a better situation if they had Buddy Hield, and they might have, maybe they traded Montrezl Harrell and KCP for
some Buddy just Hield. Other pieces, right? Exactly.
I think they'd be in a better situation. I don't think Kuzma's bad. I think obviously when you're in a big market like New York or LA or
it's amplified,
like a Chicago, right? It becomes worse. I don't think Kuzma's a bad player in any way. I think he's a good player. I think he played valuable minutes on a good team. But when you're in LA, you miss those types of shots, and every shot is recorded on film and it's on national television. It's very hard to play. I think he was criticized for some stuff he shouldn't be criticized for. They're seeing it now, right? Like all these other players are getting criticized for the same stuff.
And yes, exactly.
Washington slipped a lot, but
but I mean they're not a bad team. They're not a pushover team. Like you can't just walk in there and win. They're 13-8.
I feel they're in the same kind of boat as the Spurs.
Yeah.
Obviously, Bradley Beal is much better than anybody the Spurs has, but
Yes. I think they're more of like a, I don't know, Boston Celtics type team.
I mean, Boston's in a 5 minutes right now.
No, but they're I
Um,
mean they're another one that, you look at their record, they're 6-4 in their last 10. The Wizards are 5-5. Like I'm more kind of looking at it like that. Um,
yeah.
you did bring up something that I want to transition to because I know we always talk about the Lakers, so I don't want to like harp on them, but
Hmm.
LeBron and COVID and AD sucking is concerning. But you brought up
Yes.
the Kings, and this makes me want to
Ah.
jump. I want to talk about the Kings
Mhm.
between the events. There was a 24-hour span where a courtside fan pukes on the court, and then they
That was
fire
disgusting.
next day head coach Luke Walton. Everyone, the puke Walton memes were unbelievable, but
Yeah.
they're so bad. They're so bad with a team with a roster that isn't. I'll die on that hill. That roster is not bad. They shouldn't
Okay.
be as bad as they've been. They shouldn't.
It's not that
Do you disagree with that?
their roster is not good. They're so lopsided. You have four guys: De'Aaron Fox, Tyrese Halliburton, Davion Mitchell, and Buddy Hield, who all deserve starting minutes on a team. Buddy Hield is a starter on most teams.
But that's
Davion
my point.
Mitchell,
They shouldn't be bad. You have those
but
guys
it's
coming off your
so.
bench. You have good guys coming off your bench.
But
If you
like
don't
who
have
like
guys who suck, like it doesn't matter. Like you just have a solid bench. I walk down this
Mo
roster.
Harkless. Okay,
There are like there are like
sometimes I
eight guys that I would take on this team and that I would want on
yes.
my team.
There are so many people on this roster with trade potential.
But that's
Harrison
the
Barnes, we
thing. They're
talked.
all on the
Harrison
same.
Barnes, we've talked about it for so long. We're like, Harrison Barnes would be so good on a team. Like, someone should trade for Harrison Barnes, and the Kings never do it. Buddy
But
Hield, same thing,
Luke, but
right?
that's
But
the
like,
thing. Why do you have to trade them? They're all on the good. They're all on a team.
no,
They can be
you
good
need
together.
balance. You don't have to trade Harrison Barnes, but get rid of one of your guards. Get rid of Davion Mitchell. Get rid of Buddy Hield. Get rid of Tyrese Halliburton. Obviously, you're going to try and build around De'Aaron Fox. You paid him. He's the best player on your roster. He's going to stay there at your point guard spot. Rashawn Holmes at center, like Tristan Thompson backing him up. Not sure how confident I am in that. Mo
No,
Harkless.
but like you
Sometimes,
have
sometimes
Bagley.
I
You
take,
don't have to be playing Tristan Thompson. They're just
I
they're.
take
Oh my
the
god.
Bagley situation to worse. Sometimes I take these quizzes. It's like name the starting five on every NBA roster, and
Yeah.
I usually kill it. Right? It's usually like, okay, I get 145 and 150 starters or something like that. Right? The one I never get, Mo Harkless on the Kings. No reason for him to be starting.
No,
There's
no,
no
but
reason.
that's my point. They
And
could be
yes, you
good, and they're
can.
mismanaging this roster. They
Yes, you
they
can. You drafted Marvin Bagley with what, the second pick?
I think it was two. Not yeah, two. So it went Aiton Bagley, Luca.
Luca. Right.
It
So
went
you
four.
drafted Marvin Bagley with your second pick, and now you're not even playing him. He's still on his rookie contract, isn't he? And now he wants out, and like that's not good because like and he wasn't. It wasn't like he was playing great the first couple of years,
I
and so
know,
it's
but
kind
like
of
look at
declined downhill. But
look at what Mo Bamba's doing. Why I look at him, I look at them very similarly. Like I think
mhm,
that
mhm.
he can be a productive big, and I don't understand why even as a bench center he's not playing. It doesn't make sense to me. And so
I'm not, but
I
I'm
look
not
at
so
this
sure
team,
that
and
Bagley is
yes,
that type of
I look at this team, and I think, all right, you did at least one good job, and that was firing Luke Walton, who was just a bad coach.
player. Sure.
He looked
Yeah,
good
yeah,
when he
yeah.
was coaching the Warriors in the interim, which you could have put me out there, and I would have looked good. Like
Right.
no, it's the God's honest truth. Like anyone will look good coaching that team. And so
Yeah.
then you take that a step back and you go, all right, what has he done for the development of the young players? And the answer is nothing. He hasn't done anything. So he just was a bad coach in a
No,
good
I think
situation.
I think Luke Walton is similar to Jason Kidd, where they get hired and you're like, why?
Why? What do we do?
Right, exactly. So
So
I,
here's what I
I think
think
he
you
could be a
do
great
is,
assistant.
but then I don't think Alvin Gentry is the right call either. And so I don't think he's the right one that you want with a young roster. I think he's
You
more for like an established team type presence. I
sure.
think you got to get Kenny Atkinson in there. I think he's
I
the
think
I think he's the perfect guy. And so
yeah, I think you have to get someone who's gonna just like change the culture. He's gonna come in, he's gonna bring a new and bright idea that's gonna change the way you play basketball. Kind of like what James Borrego did in Charlotte. with LaMelo.
But I think that's the thing. It's not just a coach. And so as good as Atkinson would
Oh,
be, changing that
it's
culture,
top down.
you gotta mess up the front office. And
it
so like the
starts with
ownership is going to be bad. You're just going to have to deal with that. But you got to start making some changes up top.
It starts with the owner, and then obviously it trickles down. And you see this because, I mean, if you think about like Toronto and the management on that team,
look at Toronto. Look at what the Knicks did.
Never
look
bad.
At what,
it's always so hopeful in Toronto.
Yeah.
Same thing in San Antonio, right? It comes from the top down. You have to have a good owner. You have to have good people in charge, and it's obvious that the basketball ops people in Sacramento and the GM and whatnot, they're a little lost, and that's okay. But you need to start making decisions, stick with them, live with the consequences, build something great, and move forward. And having all this craziness isn't good for moving forward. Like De'Aaron Fox is an unrestricted free agent at the end of this contract, right? So does De'Aaron Fox want to continue to play in Sacramento? Even if Sacramento is decent, I'd rather be playing decent basketball somewhere else in Sacramento. So you have to be playing good basketball if you want to keep these guys, kind of totally. Milwaukee and Giannis. So
that opens up the dialogue of, if you are contemplating trading away some of your guards, do you potentially, and I'm not saying I would, I'm opening this to the floor. You potentially consider the idea of trading De'Aaron Fox for other young assets, picks, whatever, that are more in line with the timeline of your Halliburtons, Mitchells, whatever.
Yeah, but who has all the picks, and how do I get something for De'Aaron Fox?
You'd get a ton. You would get a King's ransom.
I want to know
who wouldn't trade for him right now. There are very few teams that I look at and I'm like, they will. Like, if you're OKC, why not trade for him and pair him with SGA?
It's less
even bad De'Aaron teams, Fox, I think, would do it.
If I'm an established team, does De'Aaron Fox scale well with my team? He's like De'Aaron Fox is like John Wall. I would John Wall's great. Don't get me wrong, and I think John Wall can be a first option on a team. But
De'Aaron Fox is a better shooter than that. I mean,
he's shooting 26% from three this year. His career high is 37%. And
yeah, it's not great.
That was on 3 attempts per game. Last year, he shot 32%. It's not the scalability of De'Aaron Fox. Could I trade De'Aaron Fox? Yes. But am I trading him to someone who's going to give me everything I want for De'Aaron Fox? No. And that's kind of why you have to keep him. I think there are people on this roster who you would get more for, like Tyrese Halliburton, I think could get a similar amount. He's starting, he shoots. It's not like he plays good defense. He, shoots the ball better than De'Aaron Fox. I think Buddy Hield is also another one of those guys. You could get a role player and 2 firsts for Buddy Hield on the right offer, on the right market.
I would say so. I would, yeah, maybe.
He's a proven shooter, one of the league's best, right? I think, and if I'm a championship team, I would love to have Buddy Hield on my roster for the right price.
I mean, I agree. And that's why it does. It boils down to the what if with the Lakers, but other teams can have that same scenario where it's he would be a welcome addition, which is why you look at Sacramento right now and you look at who they're trying to get rid of. And it comes back to the whole Ben Simmons thing. The Sixers pulled trigger there would help them.
If I had picks, I would 100%. If I was the Kings and I had picks and I had okay, I could potentially make good changes in the future for this roster, 100% would trade for Ben Simmons. Problem is, if I'm the Kings and I don't have picks right now, there's no reason for me to have Ben Simmons if I have De'Aaron Fox.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm under the assumption that in some way you're trading away to the Sixers, a lot of your young valuable pieces. I don't know, you're probably going to have to give up Harrison Barnes. You're going to have to give up Buddy Hield. You're probably going to have to give up one of, I would imagine, Halliburton or Davion Mitchell. You would have to do something like that, but then you get picks back in return. And so,
I mean, I just I don't know if
right.
I think they should just trade everything away as much as you possibly can and just restart from scratch. I think that's the only thing. If you're the Sacramento Kings, clear house.
But you don't have to. You have good players on your team.
Just trade them slowly over time. Start the process. Start the
Oh my
process.
God. No.
Like I really,
Luke,
I
they're
like I.
good.
They're not
They should be.
the worst. The worst. So they're like they're in the NBA. Like I wanted. The goal is obviously to win a championship. You
Right.
want
You're
to
not
win a
winning a
championship.
championship with this roster.
There are
No. But
there are
Luke, it's a
six
good
teams.
foundation and
There
it's
there are
young.
six
And
teams
oh my
at
God.
most. There are 6 teams that could possibly win a championship. That's right. Like the league can
Probably.
hold 6 contending teams. If I'm not one of those 6 teams, my goal is to be as terrible as I could possibly be. I want to win 0 games next year because I want that first pick. That's the goal. Anything in between winning 0 games and winning a championship is wrong, and you shouldn't do it. You shouldn't be a buying team. You shouldn't be a selling team. You should either be a really, really bad team or a really, really good team.
Yeah, the
And like
analytics
that,
agrees with you. But at the same
and
time, like where does
there's
that
no
land you
turning
as
it
free agents? No
around.
one's gonna come join you. No one's gonna so like at
You
some point
don't
there is
need
that middle
that.
ground.
You need think about the Sixers and what they did, right? They had good players on the roster. They had Drew Holiday, they had Jeremy Grant. They traded all those guys away. They were like, we don't like, I don't want to be mediocre.
They also
I
got
want them
lucky.
gone. I want to be terrible. No, they didn't get lucky. They played it right.
That
Kings
was before the new
clear house right
lottery
now.
odds. That was before the
Clear.
new lottery odds. That was when you were in last, you had a 25% chance of getting the first pick. Now you have what, 14, but
14 and a half.
But other people also have that. So like you have
top 3 pick. Hey,
you have a better chance of being the 5th pick than you do picks 1 through 4 if you have the worst record.
Embiid was the 3rd pick in his year, and he turned out better than all the number 1 picks that the Sixers had. Okafor, Simmons, Fultz. You don't want the first pick. You want 3 through 7. You could build something with that. You just got to get lucky once or twice in the.
Lucky. There it is, right out of your mouth. I told you, Luke. They got lucky.
It's not. It's not.
You have to nail the draft, and it's not easy to do.
It's not easy to do at all, and it takes time. You have to be very, very patient with this. But like, let's say like I'm really, really bad. I get the 3rd overall pick. I draft someone who's pretty solid. I draft a couple more guys, and they're not really what we need. You trade them away, and you restart again.
Luke, you can't just be bad forever.
It's about being good for that 5-year window, cashing in, and then.
No, you can't just reset like that. And that's the thing. It's much easier said than done because at the end of the day, when you're losing and your team's losing money and there's pressure on front offices, like they can't do what you're saying.
No way the Kings lose money with the revenue shares.
No, but all right, fine. You're not
you
selling
just have to
out.
give them. You just have to be. You have to try hard. You have to try hard to be good, and you have to be realistic and say like, okay, this project isn't working out. We have to tear it down and start anew. That's the life cycle. And as these small market teams, it's really, really hard. There are times when you'll get up to that 4 or 5 spot, but you don't want to be in that 4 or 5 spot. And you're saying, can we go further with this roster? And maybe you make a Masai Ujiri move, and you're like, I can trade DeRozan for Kawhi and win a championship. Maybe you do that, but I'm at that 4 or 5 spot. I don't really see us going much farther with this roster. I should start thinking about moving on from these players, move back down in the standings, rebuild, right? Because, okay, I had the number 3 pick. I draft what I think is our guy, and I truly believe in him. I play him the minutes he needs to be played. I give him all the skill. I give him everything I can possibly give him to be great. And if he's not great, that's okay. We move on from him. We say, hey, we really appreciate you giving it your best shot. We really thank you for your time here and whatever market we're in. We're going to trade you here. Best of luck. It's a business.
Right, but that's in theory. Like you're making it seem a lot easier than it is.
No, it really.
So many teams. Think about teams that have been hugging the bottom for so long.
Okay.
Like
again, I think the Kings
hard
would
to
be
get out of the dungeon.
I think the Kings would be in a better place if we're like, okay, we have the number 2 pick. We've now drafted Marvin Bagley Jr. in the 2018 NBA draft. What are we going to do with Marvin Bagley at the 2nd overall pick? We're going to give him everything we can possibly give him to be the best Marvin Bagley he can possibly be. And I think they just ride that out. And let's say they don't make it to the championship. Maybe they make it to the 2nd round. Can we go further with this roster? Maybe we can, maybe we don't. Okay, we move on from Marvin Bagley. We move on from De'Aaron Fox, right? The problem was they drafted Marvin Bagley and then they gave up on him. And they're like, oh, let's go draft a whole bunch of other people. And now they have a whole bunch of mediocre players on their roster. They're just taking up minutes. And like you said, there are so many good players on this roster. And I agree with you. But being okay is not what you want. You want to be good. You want to be great. You want to be terrible. Those are the
But that's the thing. I think with
options.
a couple tweaks, the guys you have, you're okay.
At this point, I think all these guys are so fed up with the culture in this organization. Like, even if I made the right tweaks, like I'd still be in the same spot. I'd be that 4 or 5 person, and I'd be like, "Can I go further with this roster?" Right? I think you're at a roadblock here. You've tied yourself, put yourself in a bad situation. You should just like, hey, look, everybody here, we really appreciate it. Fire your basketball president of basketball operations, fire the VP, fire the GM, fire the coach.
Okay.
Bring in a whole new culture, new ideas. It's a business. It really sucks to do that. If I was the owner,
on paper, I agree with you. In practice, I am skeptical of the execution because I don't think it would go as smoothly as you're describing. But I agree, like on paper, yes. If I'm a 2K GM, yeah, it would work. It's the truth.
Kings. Why it gave me the Sixers president of basketball operations? Kings staff and executives.
No, did they get rid of him?
No, I think he stepped down.
Oh, okay.
I mean, like, I don't know the guy they talk about all the time, but it seems like it's bad. And they've been doing this for a while, right? Their longest tenure, 37 years. Rocky Widner, team photographer. Can we get a round of applause?
Wow, there it is.
Team photographer.
That guy. His moment of fame.
Right. So, like, I agree with you. Like, you have to
fire everyone but the photographer.
you have to make big changes to your
definitely
basketball staff. I can't see them going. I agree with you. There's a lot of good players on this roster. You can make the right changes to make them good. But like, it's not like if I'm good, I'm not going to draft anybody I need to draft to be great. So I might as well just be terrible. I really think they should start moving on from some of these players. They should realistically at the deadline, they should be saying, maybe I don't fire the staff. Maybe I'm like, let's see what the staff does at the trade deadline. And if they do stuff and I'm like, hey, I think this team is moving in the right direction now. You know, we're on the path downward to the bottom of the standings where I want to be so we can draft Paolo Banchero, however you say his last name. Fine, I'm cool with that. I want that. If they don't make those moves, it's like, okay, I'm fed up with this. We keep doing the same stuff. This is madness. And you move on from some of these guys, right? You have to move on from these players, or you have to move on from your support staff and your execs. You got to make a decision. Make a decision. If you're the owner, it's up to you now.
Well, it seems like they're making it. It seems like it's happening. And I think the first step was Walton. Right, but I think that's the first step. And you're going to see, all right, what can another person do? Just in the interim, see what Gentry can get done with this roster, just to get a sense. And then I think you're going to have bigger decisions that get made. I think it's not going to happen until the offseason. Like, this doesn't strike me as something that's going to happen in the middle of the season. Like, I think it's going to happen like season ends, then you have your firings. They hire someone new so they can go through the recruiting process or like the scouting process and pro days and all that and make the draft well, like that, those sort of things. So I think any decisions that are made are going to happen like right in May when the season ends.
I mean, Alvin Gentry's track record's not like amazing. So his last head coaching job was in New Orleans.
Right.
Missed the playoffs, lost in the conference semifinals, which is the second round. Missed the playoffs. And they lost to a fantastic Golden State Warriors team. So fine. But you miss the playoffs next year?
I mean, that's an indictment on him, AD. I mean, that's not just on him, but you're right. It's not, 100%. He's not the guy. So it's more just a placeholder.
Do you think Anthony Davis lifts a team higher than De'Aaron Fox?
Yeah.
So then what makes you think that he can pull this literally like band of misfits Kings roster together into a playoff?
Oh, I don't. I'm not saying I have faith in him. I'm just saying, like, if your ownership, it's just like, all right, we got rid of what we know to be a problem. And now we're just like, all right, let's see if a change of, scheme, whatever, helps out the roster. If not, or if so, then we at least know what we're working with. So like, I think it's more just getting different looks and then you make those harder decisions later on.
I agree, but I think you really have to make a change. I think that's the only way you move out of this situation.
It's absolutely time. All right, Luke, we have been recording for a little over an hour, and it is now.
It hasn't felt like an hour.
No, of course not. time flies when you're having fun talking about basketball.
Of course.
But my Knicks start in 15 minutes, so I am going to go so I can eat a little dinner and then tweet about the Knicks for 2.5 hours.
Okay.
But
yeah,
this was a good one. I have school closing out in the next couple of weeks, but we'll get another episode in soon, and then maybe one live.
When I'm home for
back
break,
on the East Coast. Oh my God. Yeah. All of us in the same room. Get Michael in here too.
Oh my goodness. It could be too much. You can use your professional mic too, because I'm sure I sound really good with my headphones.
Oh my God. Perfect. I mean, so all our listeners know. But all right, Luke. So with that, this is the Hoop Troop Podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in, and join us next time.